All right, so welcome to lesson 26, pre-recorded for HBAR 330. A reminder, once again, as you know, you are well aware that this week is week 6 and it's still online. So again, Thursday, I'm going to do this in two parts. Part one, obviously today, and we're going to look at the extending the practical that started on Monday, right? With the kind of the snapshot practicals, as well as we'll have a look at well growing. You're growing your own self, your own personal professionalism, right? Professional journey throughout your career in this particular lesson. And then again, like I say, we'll end it off on Thursday and continue with that practical that we started on Monday. All right, so lesson 26, coaches, learnership in radio and building a winning show, HBAR 330. As you can see, as you normally know, that I don't run the actual slides, it's just gravitate to the slides so itself. Right, and then at the end of this lesson, you should be able to understand the meaning of leadership in a radio context. You understand the fundamentals of being an effective leader in radio, obviously, right? Understand what personality traits are best exploited for honest success. Understand the radio show from the listener's point of view, and understand how to use your listeners' habits in order to grow your audience, right? So let's talk about this Dreyfus model, and then we'll look at a short, a YouTube video you can see is coming up. We'll break into that in just a moment. And how do you apply the Dreyfus model of growth through your career from novice to expert? And what does that actually mean you can do or are doing, or how you are as a professional moving up and forward throughout your career? Just as a disclaimer, right? A lot of people can have many, many years in radio and still be advanced beginners or maybe even novices if they don't work proactively to grow themselves as professionals in many aspects of this particular medium, in the different aspects, right? So, learning more than just being on air, and also, even let's just look at the on air aspect, saying, look, listen, yeah, I'm not even applying on-air skills, so presentation skills and broadcasting skills to grow myself as a professional. So not obviously pushing myself, trying new things. Uh, Definitely, again, kind of creating a new kind of normal within your own space and your own platform, again, your own medium. That can also be why you might stay within a novice and advanced beginner, maybe, and then you'll easily just exit. You'll just exit the industry just as it is because complacency is one thing, sure. I mean, but complacency within a medium as man, it's cutthroat. Obviously, it's very small, as you know, in this country specifically, right? Which is what we will obviously reference because, hello, we live here and we work here, right? And you're starting to also be part of this industry one day here, right? Okay. And you'll be kicked out, swallowed, what's it, swallowed, chewed, and spit out. There we go. It doesn't really make sense. Swallowed, chewed, and that could happen in some other way. Anyway, regardless. All right. So you get the point. Let's look at where you should be at every different stage in your career. You should be bordering on novice, right? Because you haven't, from the greater perspective and assumption that a lot of you haven't been on radio yet, so you haven't worked for a station yet. And so here when you do start at a station, community station, online, here maybe at Boston Media House itself, you are within the novice stage here. And what does that mean? You need to be told what to do with no decisions to make. So you need to learn exactly how the platform works, how the medium works, how the desk works, how the playback system works, for example, how to go in and out of a link, how to play imaging, how to use quick plays, for example, what quick play is when you're looking at a playback system, how to curate basic content, how to use the phones, how to use the WhatsApp or like I say, any kind of like social messaging that we might be using at the station as well. And you understand, even in terms of the station itself, who does what departments are obviously or do exist, and where your role and your place, and who do you, I guess, respond to, but you will answer to, right? So who's your immediate, your department manager, if any, and then also who's the station manager, and you know that line of control, right? Okay. So the novice needs to go obviously through this period because you haven't had a point of reference before. You haven't done radio before. So you don't know what it's like. And it is going to be a complete a foreign experience for you as you do your first, your second, your third, even maybe your sixth, seventh, eighth, ninth show. Still will be quite new to you, right? And it'll be obviously quite a nerve-wracking experience, right? So really don't try to do anything but what is being told and directed by you, right? And obviously you'll have no decisions to make. That just makes perfect sense, right? If you're going to move up, you can start to advanced, or you're going to start at advanced beginner, where you now are comfortable in the space, right? And now you have to be allowed to play in that space, right? You must think that independently you are a kind of an island of information, right? So when I say island of independence, within the station, yes, you are part of a brand and part of a company, part of the station, and part of the system. What I say, right? But at the end of the day, it's just you on your show, and your show is not dependent on somebody else's show or somebody else's show before that, or after, and so on and so forth, right? So you are fully responsible for that space, for those listeners, and obviously for the on-air being of that particular radio station. So we need you to understand kind of that massive responsibility that you do have, and we're going to give you that little bit of responsibility through some freedom, right? Okay, in terms of being able to start maybe creating more complex content, right? Maybe start a basic feature. Again, maybe take some calls live to air, or maybe do like a live interview, controlled, very simple, that type of thing, so that you can start to expand on your comfortability, right, within this particular space, within that studio. Also, I mean, again, a bit more freedom because people are now they're familiar with you within the station itself, right? You get to take part, right? Take part in I say the system that surrounds you, right? You need more freedom, but you can't decide which parts are more important than others. That trial and test thing, and also if you try to think of life in general and apply it to your corporate life, your professional life, right? In any type of context, you need to learn what happens in a day, then from a day to day basis, then from a week to week basis, a month to month basis, maybe even a quarterly to a quarterly, and then a year to year, where you will stay in this advanced beginner because you're getting familiar with those kind of like systematic, scheduled, maybe time stamped or time based activity, or not activities, but you understand that the actual doings within the station itself, and also within your seasonal journey throughout with your on your show with your listeners, understanding their kind of lifestyle as it moves throughout those particular, obviously, like I said, from day all the way down to the year or throughout the year. And again, getting a little just a bit more comfortable, not being in a hurry to move towards things that you actually are not competent yet in doing, and then kind of messing things up and kind of having to start again if you even allowed to start from the beginning again. A lot of work. Listeners just don't trust you if you do make those massive, massive fails. That just makes them say, well, never again, right? Move to competence, right? They want the ability to make plans, create routines, and choose a course of action. We say, okay, you are again, trust and built on even more trust over here. And what are we saying here? Look, if you're looking again, you also have a little bit of ownership in creating those routines, uh, choosing maybe a course of action in terms of like the way that certain maybe certain interactions with the listener, or maybe at live events or whatever it may be. But highly, like I say, now you're highly involved in the on-air product specifically, right? And then again, you are finding a place and a footprint within the station itself. But this really is about it's looking at a broadcaster that is listener focused completely. So everything that you do, everything that you see, everything you speak of, everything you produce, whatever it may be, is very, very listener oriented, right? And you say, isn't it always listener oriented? You come to a stage in your career where you're infatuated with the listener. You continue to carry it on through proficient and expert levels, right? But you will start building in how the business works as well. And you'll create a good balance as a professional. So moving on to proficient, right? The more freedom you offer, the more you can expect and the more that they will produce. So this is when you start to invite you into business strategy. So kind of looking at departmental strategies, how you can take part and how you are valuable as an asset, right? Dealing with certain clients, being maybe assigned as an MC for certain events, whatever it is, brand ambassador, right? A more trusted brand ambassador, and again, this type of broadcaster is on the up, obviously, definitely trying out many new things that are maybe uncharted territory for, radio in general, different cool ideas, very exciting shows, very exciting product that you're obviously producing over here. Right, at an expert level, you are part of the business, right? So you understand the business, you understand the priority of the every department in the business has, right? You also understand your role, the importance of your role as a broadcaster, right? Because now you are an expert in this particular medium, right? So they don't follow the manual, they create the manual. If you treat an expert like a novice, you'll fail, and vice versa. Okay. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to let me just open this link over here. Come on. No. I wonder if it will play here. Just give me a second. Right. I think what I'm going to do, because I don't know if that, just give me a second. Just make sure. Share again. I just want to share with sound. There we go. All right. So this should play out just fine. Let's have a look at the Dreyfus model, right? Second there. All right, here we go.
How we develop a skill, any skill. Well, I want us to look at this model. It's a skill acquisition model based on the work of Simon and Hubert Dreyfus. It isn't exactly the same. I've modified it somewhat. In this model, there are 5 levels of skill development. And if we look at the vertical axis, we could consider that as a degree of measuring a skill. And the horizontal axis is to do with relevant experience. That is, experience that helps us develop greater skill in something. And I want to illustrate this with the skill of riding a bicycle, and then come back and look at how that's relevant for us developing skills in management, such as change management or project management. So let's look at the first level. This first level is called the novice level. And when it comes to riding a bicycle, I've got fond memories of this book. Read it to my children when they were preschool, Richard Scarry's Cars and Trucks and Things That Go, which my children often called Cars and Trucks and Things What Move. Each picture, each page was a rich picture of different modes of transport, telling a story as it went through. And often the children could pick out different modes of transport, and they could pick out bicycles. Occasionally they might hesitate because they weren't quite sure whether that motorbike or moped was truly a bicycle, but they began to refine their classification of what a bicycle was. This is really at the novice level. At this point, my children had absolutely no experience of riding a bicycle. So they're beginning to develop a sense of classification, a relationship with the rules. I have a persona I use when talking about the novice. In an office context, we might think of this man, Ned the novice. He's absolutely had no experience of working in an office environment and just wants to know what's expected of him on that job. He has.
I just want to make this bigger. And move on over. Yeah.
About the novice. In an office context, we might think of this man, Ned the novice. He's absolutely had no experience of working in an office environment and just wants to know what's expected of him on that job. He has a relationship with the rules. To start with, everything he learns is theory, because he has got no practical experience to reference, and he can't exercise discretion. Experience hasn't given him any sense of what's more important. He can't prioritize. So the next thing that somebody asks him to do, he's likely to do it. And so what does he see around him? He sees artifacts, he sees documents, reports, emails. So he's very focused on his email inbox and marshalling and producing documents. Ned loves templates. It helps him produce good artifacts, he thinks. At the second level, it's the level of the advanced beginner. And the advanced beginner has somewhat more experience. So if we're looking at the skill of riding a bicycle, this would really be the wobbly bike level. When my children learned how to ride a bicycle without the stabilizers on, staying upright on two wheels, their conscious incompetence was very high. They were fully focused on staying upright. They'd find it hard to avoid trees, but they were beginning to learn how to maneuver the bicycle in terms of getting to a certain destination. But I wouldn't let them on a public highway. They were too dangerous to themselves and to other road users for that to happen. The same is true for the advanced beginner. Their conscious incompetence is high. They're very focused on the job in hand. And here's our persona. This is Becky, the advanced beginner. And Becky looks down on Ned because she's beginning to realize that there's some point to the artifacts. She has a relationship with the rules and the outputs, in other words, the delivery of what she's supposed to do. But she's got a very limited appreciation of her context. Her experience isn't broad enough yet for her to understand that there are different kinds of contexts. Everything she experiences still has a kind of normal feel to it. She values practice and process. She's becoming very process-oriented. She sees herself as a link in the chain. So sometimes she can become quite legalistic, insisting that other people present work to her in the right way for her to continue the process. But still, she hasn't really learned how to prioritize from a great deal of experience. Still quite hard for her. The third level, though, is interesting. This is the level of the proficient. In our bicycling analogy in the UK, we have got a qualification program called Bikeability, or the Road Safety Test, Road Proficiency Test. And here we see a young man going through that, going through the training and the assessment. Now, I would suggest that at this level, that young man is a safe road user. However, he is still vulnerable to threats from other road users. Possibly he is still learning to anticipate what other road users are about to do. Same is true for our persona. Here we have Paul, the proficient. Now, Paul has a relationship with the outcome. Paul understands what a result is beyond just delivering something, and he's making connections with that. He's beginning to see a richer variety of contexts from his experiences, and he's also really thinking hard about what he can do to produce a better outcome. His danger is, though, that he's aware of his strengths. For example, he's beginning to make a connection with his work and his passion, but he's less aware of his weaknesses. He's still thinking in a fairly limited systemic way, fairly linear. If I do A and B, then I will get C. He's aware of his involvement in an overall process, but here's the thing, he's now developing an ability to think outside of the process and observe himself, sometimes to interrupt his mental narrative and be consciously self-aware of how he's feeling and thinking about a particular piece of work. This is a really crucial learning point, but it's not the end of him developing his skill. The next level is the level of the expert. Now, in our bicycling analogy, we have the urban cycle courier. This person has developed a high degree of symbiosis between themselves and their bicycle. They also have a highly rich internal map of their city, so that if they see any impediments to their progress, any congestion, traffic congestion, they can reroute themselves on the fly. It's just what they do. So they see a problem up ahead, they go down a side street and navigate that way. But also they're anticipating other road users in such a way that occasionally, although they know the rules of the road, they can begin to see those micro-tell in other road users, and they can begin to anticipate accidents to the point where they're even prepared to break the rules. They might respect the rules, but if it comes to their safety, they might well, for example, mount the sidewalk to get out of a particular urgent threat. So in our office or knowledge work context, I've posited the idea of Erica, the expert. I've got the icon as a nurse or a midwife because observing nurses and midwives who have a high order skill, they are looking for unusual patterns in different contexts. They bring a perspective. Certain things that they are focusing on are in the foreground. They prioritize them. They've got a much more systemic view of reality than Paul the proficient has. They have a high degree of tolerance for volatility, uncertainty, and some sense of complexity. And as I've said, they have an ability to respect the rules, but they are prepared on occasions to break them for good reason. Erica has a high sense of flow now. She understands and is aware when she's being productive, and that's systemic appreciation. Final level is the level of the master. What's the illustration here for bicycling? Well, let's think of Tour de France. Somebody in the Tour de France is a world-class athlete. They're probably working in concert with a team. They are working at a strategic level and a tactical level. They are super fit, yes. They have this attunement, not just to the bike, but to road and weather conditions. Now, the persona we've got here is Mary the Master. Mary is somebody who's got a high order skill, who is actually looking at the whole system. She has a relationship with a vision. If the skill we've been looking at were, for example, project management, Martha would have now been elevated to either program director or portfolio director. She's looking right across the organization, and she values context over abstraction. She's showing a high awareness, high adaptation, intuitive grasp of situations. She's got a tolerance of complexity and ambiguity. She can recognize and pick up when certain evidence, when everybody else is making one interpretation, she's asking herself, well, what if the opposite is true? The master. Now, what we notice in this illustration using bicycling as a skill is that in many organizations, whatever the skill is, they put most of their investment in learning and development, in moving the novice to the advanced beginner. There are a number of reasons for this. It's easy. It's easy learning design because it's about content. Less so from the advanced beginner to the proficient, because this requires some design around practical implementation. But what we observe is that there's very little in the way of learning and development solutions to move people on from the proficient to the expert. One of the things that happens is that in organizations, people who have got the potential to become experts or masters never actually rise above that because they see very few examples of that, or people think they're good enough and move them on to the next. Even less so in moving the expert to the master. Although what we will discover in later videos is that's not so much a problem, because the ownership of learning and development shifts from the organization owning the learning and development of the novice and advanced beginners to the experts and the masters owning their own learning and development. But there are a couple of general observations I want to make about the skill.
Right. Okay. So a good extension around more of a broader approach to the model. I like that obviously added the master there, and we have obviously competent right on the side here. All right, let's move swiftly along. I think you do understand, but you do also need to apply that here. You'll see in the class discussion while your thoughts are fresh. This is what you have to go and do. Yeah. So using the Dreyfus model, describe what you would proactively do to graduate from a novice to an advanced beginner. So that's just stage one to stage two. When you start your career, obviously in radio broadcasting, right? So, what are you going to proactively means no one has to ask you, right? You want to make obviously that particular improvement. You want to obviously upskill, you want to grow, and you want to advance quite quickly through to the next stage, right? The next level. Again, it's all good and well if you want to do it, but you need to actually do it. So you actually need to apply yourself and then outputs have to reflect in who you are and what you do so that you can be considered advanced beginner. And just as a bit of a story, we did team building many years ago at Prime Media, where this was just one of the many team building, I say classes or whatever it is, that seminars that we had to go on, and that the facilitator, whatever it may have been, actually asked us to rate ourselves, to actually stand against the entire on-air staff had to stand in a line against the wall, right, and actually go and rate themselves as to, what they perceive themselves to be in terms of a novice to as you move along throughout, obviously, this line against the wall, to all the way to expert slash master, whatever it may be, right? And the thing is that afterwards, the station manager would reposition you, which was super, I say, probably super uncomfortable with certain people that misplaced themselves, which there were a few, quite a few actually, misplaced themselves. One particularly, maybe they're underrated, didn't give themselves enough credit, I suppose, and weren't actually aware or cognizant or whatever it is of the skills that they actually do have and kind of the growth and the potential that they do offer, whatever it is. But and they would go and obviously rate themselves a little bit lower. But other people who thought which was I think maybe just a little bit more uncomfortable, right? Was that they would rate themselves a little bit higher, right? So thinking that they had advanced to, let's say, any higher either higher ranking, right? And the station manager would then go place them according to what he, in this particular context, it was a guy, was definitely obviously categorizing them. And it was a good exercise because one, it was everything's a test. When you go out to work, everything's a test. Like don't I mean like anyone who tells you otherwise is lying, right? So everything's a test. Everything that you say, you do, you act, you perform, you don't perform, whatever it may be, whatever it is, right? Everything is a way to kind of reflect to people that are watching. I'm saying so. In other words, your boss, right? Your supervisor, whatever it may be, right? And also to your co-workers as well, to reflect like some kind of perception about you, right? And because perception, quote unquote, breeds reality. And I want to say quote unquote because I know that that's not really true. I'm saying reality breeds reality, but the truth actually in the real world is everyone else's perspective on you or perception of you, right? So the perspective they have on you and then the perception about you that they have is is what unfortunately what counts because it's true because the world will act based on what they interpret from you and what you give them, right? Not what you think and feel and what you might consider the truth and reality, right? Okay, so anyway, you need to go and say what you would do proactively to graduate, right? I say from novice to advanced beginner quite quickly and obviously astutely. When I'm saying like that, it's got to actually count. So list at least 5 points describing your activities, the actions, and the behaviors when you are answering this question. Good luck. Right. So let me move here. Let's go into kind of we're going to look at the different aspects as we mentioned before, so leadership, empathy, ego, that type of stuff, right? Let's look at leadership in radio. So new inexperienced talent are those with limited ability can be managed with more direct input. Um, so this is a teacher-student relationship where the student is expected to learn, understand, and then ask a lot of questions. And if you run out of questions, ask your teacher, quote unquote, your manager, to ask you questions, right? So that you are also prepared beyond preparation, right? So if the talent has a good feel for their role, for your role, right, or his or her role, what is expected and how to grow, it allows leadership through persuasion, where influence is primarily through explanation, discussion, and demonstration, right? So this encourages participation in the process and demands communication skills and good judgment. And I'm just kind of reading this out because it's very straightforward, right? And then obviously, as you know, I will expand on. Let's quickly just finish this slide. Experienced talent often responds, to a strategic approach which provides support, ideas, and praise with occasional but limited criticism. The goal of managing talent is then to create a relationship that builds confidence with the support for personal and professional growth. So, just to kind of revise on what is being said here, or what we put out here as points, right? Okay, is that you and your manager, and either or way, because again, this is management in radio, 30 years management in radio, right? So you got to understand from both sides. You've got to really build a great relationship with each and every one of your presenters. So we're going to talk from an on-air perspective, right? Again, we have mentioned before why each person is being built as a brand and a product, and so for your service, right? And so each one has to be dealt with individually. So when I say dealt with, they have a particular way that each person is going to respond, and to, let's say, positive, negative feedback, to let's say kind of guidance and direction, whatever it may be, right? Different ways people get creative, or more inspired to be more creative and more kind of challenging, whatever it is. So they'll challenge their own, um, I'd say maybe their own boundaries again, borders that, again, traditional borders that are quote unquote set right by the industry or by the medium itself. Again, you have to have a trust, like any manager does, man. There's got to be some trust. The moment it becomes a consecutive, like a concurrent thing or whatever, consistent thing, between employee to manager, right? And you can see a trend. The employee can see, oh no, it's not just once, it's twice, it's three times. This is how most a manager is now going to work, right? They don't like it, because the thing is that it doesn't allow them to be a creator, for example, in our situation, and a very, like I say, a productive, proactive individual, where you don't have to be constantly cheerleading them like a child. But the thing is, they're a person at the end of the day, right? Anyways, I'm saying to you, they will start to draw back. They will obviously have less interest and less enthusiasm for the work that they are doing, the shows that they're doing. They'll try and create a bubble in the studio where they can be, quote unquote, free from um, the corporate culture, I suppose, which is also just not a good thing. Just because one thing is being done, that person needs to grow within the corporation itself, the radio station itself, with all the departments, all the different, like I say, moving parts, which will make them even a better product at the end of the day. Again, that kind of like detachment, right? And it happens with every business. Like the person is just, whether they want the kind of like affirmation or whatever it is that gets them going, quote unquote. Again, I've got to use that many quotes there, right? Because I don't want to imply things because you're living in 2024. Anyway, so you're going to lose that person, and again, also bad management, man. That's just bad management. In Obviously, just in one of the many ways that you can be a bad manager. Doesn't make any sense. Why would you have selected, like, also like cherry pick this particular person for your station? Because there are so many people that you could choose from or pick from, and there are so few on your positions. You would pick this person because you really have a massive investment and massive confidence in them, see something completely special, and then it makes little to no sense. You would not treat them well, you understand, just like any of your other employees, I suppose. Um, uh, yeah, I'm gonna say suppose because again, I don't want to go and pick other departments. I'm speaking about on-air talent, right? Okay. Anyway, so really that trust, that kind of like parent-child, relationship in the beginning, definitely, and then again, definitely always the respect to your manager, but also we want dual respect, right? I respect you as a person and a professional, and I respect you as a person and a senior professional. Right. Okay. It is, I work for you and you work for me. So I say it in both ways because both ways have to obviously, like, you're valuable in both ways, right? The employee finds the manager valuable to them. They also give them that job, right? They give them the opportunity, give them the platform, give them the space, give them the right, and so on and so forth, right? But also the manager looks at that employee and says, I value you. You are giving me, you're making my product good. You're working hard. I can depend on you. You understand? It's a mutual thing. And anything else just sounds silly and stupid, right? Okay, so respect both parties, both obviously management and employee, right? So programming department, whatever it may be, must commit to be an honest, open relationship. Success is shared, as is responsibility for failing short of goals, right? So that's very straightforward, right? That kind of respect, as I just mentioned before, realistic expectations. Talent and coaches must know what to expect from one another and what is considered acceptable, right? So also kind of no vagueness, please. So you don't want a manager that doesn't tell you exactly what they want from you. It's also their business and their strategy and their kind of vision. They're also management, which means they are well versed in the product, or the brand, it's the station itself, right? So they should be very clear in what they want from you. And also, you as an employee, let's say you as an employee, you as a manager, right? You as an employee, also need to open up your mouth, right? So you need to say there, listen here, like I'm busy with this, I want this, I need this, I don't get this, I need some help here, whatever it is, right? Okay, I need to discuss, I need clarity, whatever it may be, right? Partnership, right? You win and lose together, enabling individuals or individual roles to achieve common goals. So you're not left outside or left to hang alone outside. I don't know what the idiom is, whatever it is, the phrase. Anyway, honesty, right? So there's no room for internal politics or jealousy, which leads to fear and mistrust. So again, yes, sure, you can break your employees' trust and they can do it back to you also. Perhaps maybe once, right? Maybe even twice, nothing more than that, right? Because you now have learned, has learned their lesson and their place, and obviously that it is maybe it was influenced by like stupidity or I don't know, like being frivolous. I don't know, just kind of like that irresponsibility, right? And you can, I suppose, we can all no, we can not. I suppose we can understand and accept people as human beings, right? But the truth is. More than once or twice is basically dealing with someone who actually um, is a child, I suppose, right? Okay, and not, yeah, I mean, it's like you don't know what's going on. An adult should know. It's very clear to you what has happened. You weren't not there. You weren't absent for all of that. You were part of that. So, really, honesty is there's nothing more to say about it. Just be honest on both sides, right? Because you can see decaying structure quickly happen, right? Support. Um, you may not have all the answers, but must be willing to help find the answers too, right, on both sides, right? Interest. So listening to comments, suggestions, opinions, etc., on and off air shows on investment or an investment in the success of this relationship. So we want to know that we're doing shows not every single day now. The boss must listen, right? But they need to be able to show interest, do snoop sessions, like I don't know, acknowledge certain things that you did on air when they were listening, because they should be listening to the station, quote unquote, all day, right? as part of their job amongst many of the other responsibilities, right? So a vested interest in your employee shows them like, oh, you actually care. Sure, sometimes also, I mean, you have to give them the bad with the good, right? Also tell them like, listen, yeah, like I need to have a meeting with you. We need to fix this. I need to obviously attend to this, or let's like attend to this is the best way of saying it. And then saying like, listen, yeah, straight up, this is it. I expect that, and this shouldn't be done like this. Whatever. In the polar opposite of that, just get some water, right? So you can facilitate growth, facilitate learning, and allow progress by demonstrating how to grow, right? And also upskilling, right? Encouraging that particular broadcaster to also learn stuff about production, about sound engineering, about PR, marketing, sales, whatever it may be, right? So that they also can grow as an expert professional within this particular field, right? Okay. Let's look at ego, right? So one of the biggest challenges is developing talent while managing ego, right? So again, you're going to say to me, oh, man, this is not true, obviously, because it actually isn't reflected within not just our industry, but many other industries, both local and international, right? Where you do get more successful people and obviously a quote unquote the bigger people, so the breakfast and the drive shows that are pumped with reasons to be egotistical. But many more across our lineup can also just adapt that very because they are on radio, they are getting affirmations, validations, followers, fans, whatever it may be, right? And they are liking and enjoying the sound of their own voice in an unhealthy way, right? You build this massive ego, it is not healthy, and also everyone will drop or fall from grace. Finished, right? And not only just that, it isn't pretty. It's not a gross it's not a nice thing, it's a gross thing to be egotistical in an unhealthy way, in a toxic way. And unfortunately, we like the stations and the management and the staff and the clients will feed that unhealthy ego. We're looking at on paper, and I know why ego or bad or unhealthy egos, toxic egos are bad, period. Right. As absurd as it sounds, some managers even work against their own personalities out of fear, or work against them out of fear. And if they become too popular, the personalities could be lured to a competitor or command a higher salary in the next negotiation. There's nothing wrong with that. I don't see what's if you are popular and you are growing and the station's growing because of you, you should get a higher salary. That's just how it works, right? So that's not like I say, that's not like any type of manipulation or anything bad, right? So the people that earn a lot of money tend to one deserve a lot of money as well because of their placement and their place in the radio station, right? Encourage a thirst for success. This will be to create an environment for security and confidence, leading to an even better performance. So confident talent is productive talent at the end of the day. Okay. All right. So I'm going to just stop there for today. And I want to quickly move to uh, this one. So back to the snap content and end the lesson on. So what I would like to do is start breaking down. So we did in the previous lesson, we broke down strap lines. These are just base ideas, promos, interviews, and then topics. And what I'd like to do over the next couple of lessons is to start breaking each one of these down further, right? So as far as we can. All right. So for example, what I would like is just 5 questions, surface questions. We would have to go and do more research, please. This is not how you do so we're doing it step by step, kind of trying to understand a greater angle, greater questions in this particular case for interviews. But you would go and you would research a little bit more and you would find more educated angles, whatever it may be. I'm going to do obviously, base questions over here. Right. So, for example, okay. So, what quote unquote traditional, 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 whatever it is, what traditions maybe, tra no, what aspects? I'm gonna do this. Okay. What part of your relationship do you consider to still be traditional? Traditional. Okay, because we are talking to again new age couples, so Gen Z couples on campus. Uh, two very different, want two very different types of couples. So definitely to the extremes of perhaps maybe very religious, traditional, kind of all kind of man woman type thing. Very very stereotypical. Um, Again, old school, quote unquote. This old school structure of that versus versus another very different polar opposite. But also when finding, for me, if I would find it's a traditional couple, I'd also make sure that that particular couple also has a very unpredictable um obviously characteristics to their relationship, to making them the reason why I'm going to put them on air with, alongside, maybe, like I say, what was that word, man? What is it when you are, oh, I don't even know what the word is now, but when you're an open couple, like an open relationship couple, or it could be like a throuple, right? So it's three people in the relationship, would be quite interesting to speak to, or speak about, or speak whatever it is around. All right. So what part of your relationship do you consider to still be traditional? Okay. Okay. Uh, the larger, say, typical perception, okay, of uh, Gen Z, non-stereotypical perception of Gen Z's attitude to labels, maybe, labels in a relationship, say that, uh, uh, labels, say that no, labels makes more sense, right? Labels, labels are for, I don't know, if this is really old school, but for the birds, right? For the birds, right? Okay. So, so is this true? Okay. Is this true? You, uh, you feel obligated to identify within the scope of a specific label, relationship label. Long question, but it's fine. Right. Okay, let's try another one. So, what are okay? What mm, you find yourself, make it too childish, find yourself arguing, disagreeing, or disagreeing on the most, on the most. Okay, what do you do? What do you do? And there's a lot of what's here. Doesn't really matter. Honestly, again, I'm shooting from the hip here. So, what do you do to reconcile? Reconcile, reconcile. That's not the right spelling. Reconcile, is it reconcile, right? reconcile, or find common ground. Common ground. Okay. Uh, common uh, ground. Okay. Do okay. Do you um are you in are you in this or any relationship uh with the view uh of it being your last one, your last. In other words, like, do you just like do you go into a relationship just for the sake of being in a relationship, or do you actually go uh, and and decide to be in a relationship with with a hope or with investment of saying, listen, yeah, like this is someone I could marry. This is someone I could quote. Oh man, I don't even. What is the other one? What is just like permanent partners? I don't know what the terminology is when you like live together but you never are married because you don't believe in marriage or whatever it is. I'm kind of being judgmental, but because I don't know. But anyway, like that type of thing, right? So, but talking about permanent, obviously, like a permanent partner. All right. Okay. Then what I'd like to I'd like you to try, I'd like us to hopefully, if there are some attendance on Thursday, is that we will continue with these as we finish up this lesson. Like I say, lesson 20, what we at 26 now, 26, right? Lesson 26, and going obviously and doing more of these together, right? If you because I have uploaded to Call Campus, right? Now this I've shared this particular document in its first stage, so you do have the document to download, right, and participate in. Then also try and proactively. I'm going to emphasize that just as a kind of like a point for this lesson, being proactive, right? Proactively try your own so we can get some feedback from you in terms of what you might have asked. Really cool questions that might have add some good angles as well to the person or people that you are interviewing, having here in studio, right? Trying to think of obviously how to apply what you have learned so far in radio across all 3 years, right? But also throughout this year, and just also while we have started this kind of focus on content creation and being on air. Try to be a little bit more than just like some kind of like one dimensional product, one predictable person or whatever personality, right? Be more, right? Just be more, do more, and then obviously achieve a little bit more than what is expected of you by the world around you. Okay, I'm gonna just save that over there, and I'm going to exit, and I am going to leave. Yes, it says there, screen sharing is stopped. And I'm going to end the lesson there for today.